What is up, Podheads? Back with another episode of the Podioslave podcast. My name is Tony. I'm joined, as always, by Anthony.
I am here.
He is. And it's a snow day. It's been a snowy month here. This is going to drop probably 10 days after we're recording it, but we've had a pretty busy pod week this week with concerts and interviews and show recaps and more interviews, and it's been a blast, man.
I know, it's like I don't know if I'm coming or going, right? Where do I focus my energy? You know, one thing is like we don't always have a ton of time, but it's like, do we promote the episode that just came out? Do I, focus on the next interview? It's we're living in the future and then the present and the past all at the same time, and that's kind of the same thing with this conversation today.
Absolutely, and we are living. This week was a week that an episode came out that we recorded like 10 days ago. That was an awesome episode. People are digging it. People are checking it out. We recorded an episode a couple nights back. We're recording one tonight, and it's just been, which one am I paying attention to? Like, do I want to post stuff about this conversation? Well, this conversation is not going to come out for 10 days. So yeah, that's the podcaster's life right there. I guess it's sort of like an artist who has an album out that they've been working on for 3 years. It's maybe been done for a year, and now they got to talk about it again. Like, man, I've moved on from that. We hear that from time to time with artists. They haven't, moved on, but you know what I mean? They're into other things because it's been a year since it's been wrapped. But now you got to do the press circuit, and we're the press circuit, so we're like, let's hear it. We've heard 4 songs. Let's talk about this, and they got to get back into that mindset. We're doing that too on a small scale.
I know. Yeah, it's it's kind of crazy, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of what our equivalent is. Take Brother Ali, he's heading out on tour. Like, what's our equivalent? I mean, for us, it's looking forward to interviews. It's prepping for interviews. It's trying to, curate topics and interviews that, artists that we resonate with. So, I mean, you're here for Brother Ali for this episode, but we do have a full catalog. I mean, this is what we do. It is a music podcast. We discuss albums. We have folks all around the music industry, rappers, folks from bands, photographers, promoters, label owners. Who am I missing? Everyone in between.
Radio DJs, yeah, all that
radio
stuff.
DJs, yeah. Nothing's off limits, and that's what I like. This is not a rock first podcast. It's not a hip hop first. We love it all, and that is our niche. We love it all.
Yeah, right. There's no niche here. The niche is that we love all the music. So this was a big one for me. We've been very lucky in getting a lot of the stuff that you kind of grew up going to see, Twan, when you were in college in Mass, and we've had guest after guest that I love too, but you were like there in the moment for a lot of that stuff. I was there in the moment for a lot of these East Coast, whether it be Rhymesayers, Brother Ali, Atmosphere, those guys, and seeing them come through, finding them in college, going to those shows. That's what I was doing. And to have Brother Ali, looking across from me at the computer today and talking to us for 45 minutes about his new record was absolutely a pinch me moment.
I know. It's one of those things is, you get someone like Brother Ali who has an album that's out now, but where do you get 45 minutes, you get an hour, how do you cram 25 years of thoughts and questions and like listening to him on his records into an hour, right? Or less. It's fun, but it's also like, where do I focus my energy?
Yeah, it can be a little daunting just because of how much time and energy you've spent to listen to the music and listen to him talk on his podcast, the Travelers podcast, which is great. Go check that out. He did one with Ant talking about the tour they were on and the record. That's, pretty much must listen. If you listen to this and then go listen to that one too, because it's great. And then the record's great. We've spent some time with it. It's called Satisfied Soul. It came out this past Friday, February 14th on Mello Music. Brother Ali, Ant produced. Awesome. Front to back, going to be in my top albums of the year for sure.
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's one that I've listened to quite a bit over the last couple weeks, and I don't skip a track. I don't. And actually, I think he mentions that it's a playthrough. I didn't skip a single track from the first song to the last song, right? That first song with Yassine Bey, and then the last song, which it did get the last track magic stamp from us.
Absolutely. Yeah, great track, and everything in between. So yeah, go spin that after you've listened to us talk to Brother Ali, which I think we'll get into right now. Here's Brother Ali. All right, we are here with Brother Ali. How you doing, man?
I'm great.
we're really excited for this. I've been listening to you since the early 2000s and caught you live a couple times in our home city, Portland, Maine. I think the last time was in Portland was '06, and I think we said hey out front by the tour bus at the asylum. So I know I barely remember it, so I'm sure you don't remember it. But it was a blast. That show was awesome. And we love that you guys continue to kind of give our area love and come through the smaller markets like Portland, Maine. I know Atmosphere's here tonight. We're going to see that too. So pretty cool stuff.
Yo, yeah, man. I mean, it's always been great. Like that, the East Coast really kind of fell off for us in terms of shows and attendance. Like we used to do great in Philly, we used to do great in New York, we used to do great in DC, and all of our numbers are down from our whole cohort. Like Atmosphere still does well in general, but it's just kind of down in all of the bigger cities. But cities like Portland, Maine, and Pittsburgh, and like the cities that aren't the cities that were considered the B markets or C markets in the East Coast, they held on. Like they're still strong. And I'm not sure why that is. I think it has something to do probably with, they were never interested in like what's hot. This is like,
Agreed.
what do I feel personally? And I think our music ages well in terms of like resonating with people on a human level, but we were never cool. So we never stopped being cool.
Hey, you were cool to us.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. We love it.
So do you like we've asked other artists and whatnot, like if they remember certain gigs and like, do you remember these gigs over the years, like certain cities and certain gigs, or is it all kind of blend in at this point?
No, my memory is really good. So I don't remember every single show. I mean, I've done thousands of them, but I remember tours, and there are certain nights that I really do remember. And I've never smoked, and I've never drank, and I've never used any kind of drugs other than sugar and fat, other than
Fair.
like pizza and ice cream. But those don't mess up your memory. They just mess up your
Right.
just mess up your profile.
I hear that, and I'm a diabetic, so I try to stay away from the sugar myself. So I hear you there. So give our listeners a little context. We're obviously familiar with you, but we want other people to be as well. When did you start rapping? When did you start getting into hip hop and thinking it was going to be something you were going to do to perform and be out there?
Well, that's kind of two different things. So I've been in hip hop since I was a little kid. So I'm albino. My parents are white. Albinos exist in every group of people, but most people around the world associate albinism with blackness because sub-Saharan Africans have way more albinos than anybody else, and also it's more noticeable. So it's kind of a branding thing where people consider albinos to be black. Wherever I go, whenever I see people from the African diaspora, whether they're like from the continent or Jamaica or America or whatever, there's always this like understanding, and people that are albino or not will sometimes assume that I'm black, or people that are black or white or other will sometimes assume that I'm black. I also, my family had all kind of interesting, highs and lows and dysfunctions and things like that. And so I ended up being taken in and trained and raised and mentored and inspired and loved and fought and everything else. Like most of the important people in my life were black growing up. And so I was in love with hip hop because of that, as a little kid. Like it's the music that I always grew up with. And but I didn't think that, because of the way that I look, and I, was in Minneapolis and like never met anybody and that was in hip hop or, like actually performing, and doing it as a profession. I didn't think it was possible until two things happened. One, I met the Rhyme Sayers guys, Atmosphere and Musab and Idea and Abilities. Meeting those guys really inspired me because they were doing it by themselves and they were pressing albums and they were throwing shows and they had real fans. They were not on the radio, they weren't on TV. The music industry wasn't part of it, but they were just doing what they were doing and they were able to make a living at it. So that happened. And then at the same time, Black Star came out. So Yasin Bey also, when Yasin Bey came out, I'm also a convert to Islam and was raised in kind of like inner city, predominantly Black mosques. And Yasin Bey also is from that very specific community within the American Muslim community. And most def, And he was the greatest at that time. And he, in a lot
For
of
sure.
ways, revitalized everybody's hope in hip hop. Like everybody that comes from the perspective I come from, he was the golden child. It was like Tupac and Biggie. And then when they were killed, there was this like exodus, there was like this mass rush to try to be the next Pac and Biggie, where basically it meant that all of these great artists were trying to become mainstream. And they were all fighting with each other to become mainstream. And it was very flashy and very commercial. And a lot of people and I mean, we were 20 when that happened, but a lot of us were just like, hip hop's over. Like
Shit,
like we
yeah.
didn't get into it for that. And it was just like, dude, this is horrible. And then this whole kind of underground thing emerged, but the brightest light of all of them was definitely Mos Def, and MF Doom, and there was a number of them at that time. But for me, it was Atmosphere and Mos Def that made me feel like, okay, I can do this professionally. So that was in the late '90s.
Do you remember those first times rhyming? Like, you always hear like I was in my bedroom, trying to replicate this or trying to find my voice. Do you remember those early moments of trying to find your voice and your cadence and flow and all that?
Yeah, so I didn't I was always good at it from the time I was little. I mean, from I was 7 years old. I performed at a school talent show when I was in second grade, and I did the Houdini song called One Love,
Oh no.
and I like dressed up in a suit because I saw Run DMC wearing like leather like jackets, like suit jackets,
Damn,
and I was like,
second
oh,
grade? Holy shit.
yeah, second grade, and I was like, okay, yeah, you wear a suit to rap, that's what you do. But I wore like an Easter suit and sneakers and like, yeah, I beatboxed and I performed One Love by Houdini. And then when I was in eighth grade, or no, I'm sorry, 8 years old, third grade, my grandmother died and I performed at her funeral. Like I rapped at her funeral. And so, yeah, those were the first kind of times of like holding a microphone and being like, okay, I'm good at this. Yeah, so that was pretty early.
Do you remember maybe one of your early shows where you were like, all right, people are here for me tonight? This is pretty badass.
Yeah. So that would have been that wasn't until I was like, 19 or 20. There was a scene in the Twin Cities that was developing, and there was a full scene. It wasn't just Atmosphere and Identity Abilities. It wasn't just that time, it was the Rhymesayers Collective. And they were a collective. It was like, when you were in that crew, it was known that these guys do shows. And when you get the $100 at the end of the night, you don't keep it. You don't spend it. They reinvest it. I mean, they were performing 3, 4 nights a week. Somebody from that crew was always performing, and that money always went back in the pot. But there was a whole scene of people that didn't make it as far as Rhymesayers did, but that were part of that scene. And so I started going to one of the main events was at this little spot called Bon Appetit. It was like on the West Bank in the in Minneapolis, which is the University of Minnesota area. And it was all ages. Sunday nights was the big day. There was no alcohol, but you would go there and they had like euros and fries. Like I always left smelling like French fries. And but they
Yeah.
had a little performance space. And I was one of the guys that, when I was there or, one of the days I battled a guy named Carnage the Executioner who made a name for himself, and he's super dope. He's still doing it. He's like, opened for Atmosphere and Blueprint and some other folks. But he and I battled one time, and it was the biggest night that they had there. And yeah, I started noticing that like when I get on the mic, people are like, "Oh, you know what I mean?"
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so that started to become a thing. But even before then, like in my high school, by the time I got to high school, I was recording tapes at home and selling them at school. Every time there was a dance, every time there was some sort of function, I would always, perform or be in ciphers or like I've been known as someone that rhymes really well from the time that second grade talent show. It was like I stole the show. Like
Yeah.
people have always known, like I've always known and my circle have always known that I had a gift for being on the mic.
So you do that right off the get. That's pretty cool. So you've always probably felt like you're doing what you're supposed to.
Yeah. I remember I had a moment when I was 13 where KRS-One was my favorite at that particular point. That was probably 1990. And he did a lecture tour at universities. and he came through Michigan State University. My family was living in Lansing, Michigan at that time. So we went to the lecture, and he had just put out a book called Stop the Violence. It was part of the self-destruction, Stop the Violence movement. And at the end, they had questions. Like you could step up to two microphones in the audience. And I was the first one to step up, and I said, I've memorized everything you ever said on a record. And I bought this book and I love it. I said, I don't know if you make your music with me in mind, but I love it. And you're the person I look up to most in life. And so when this is all over, would you sign the book? And he said, no, come on stage now. So he invited me on
Oh,
stage,
wow.
and he signed my book, and he told me I should read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I just was like standing next to him, and KRS-One is like 6'6" or something. He's enormous. And I was 13 at that time. So I'm standing next to KRS on the stage, and I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at the podium. He's speaking, and I look in the audience, and I just was like, oh, this is me. Like, this is what I am.
Wow.
And I had a flashback to that moment when I was giving the keynote address at the Nobel Peace Prize Forum. And I was like, oh, I'm KRS. I became what I saw KRS-One being. I became that.
That's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. To have that, I don't really know what to say to that. That's pretty dope. You chronicle that story in one of the songs on the new record. Two dudes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you heard that?
Oh yeah. We've listened to it a couple times. It's phenomenal.
Okay. I didn't know they were sharing the music, but yeah, I talk about that. Yeah, so actually, yeah, so you're saying by the time this comes out, the record will be out. So
Yeah,
okay, so yeah, there's a song called Two Dudes on the new album where I basically just kind of talk about the fact that, when you go to work, sometimes you just run into other people at work. And where you work is on stage in the music industry, sometimes the people you run into at work are famous people. So I talk about a weird chance encounter with Justin Timberlake, and then another one with KRS where I tracked him down to basically, thank him, but I also interrupted him when he was like running around, like it was at a big like Rock the Bells festival. And I can't remember if he was going on stage or getting off stage, but I had been trying to talk to him for years and I never got a chance to. And so I was like, I'm going to force it. So I ran up on him and I literally grabbed him by the shoulders and I was like, please stop what you're doing and talk to me. So I interrupted him. And that you don't do that to that man. Like he's called the teacher. He literally has the hip hop, the temple of hip hop. Like he's an alpha in every sense of the word. You don't tell him to do stuff. He tells you to do stuff. And I grabbed his shoulders and I was like, please stop. Like, listen to me. And so I tell the story and it was so awkward and weird. And like, it was just it wasn't a great encounter, and it wasn't bad. Like there's no scandal and there's no, it's just a weird encounter we had. And, so yeah, that song Two Dudes is just about the fact that these are famous people, but in that moment, we're just two dudes at work having a weird interaction.
Right. Yeah.
When those situations are happening in the moment, are you thinking ahead of, hey, I'd like to chronicle this in a song, or does it come later? Where you're like, you know what, that was a unique experience. I want to go back and do it, or do you feel it in the moment?
No, not both of those. So when the Justin Timberlake one happened, the guys that invited us there knew him. And I did end up, so the short version of the story is I didn't know that somebody got on stage when I was performing. I kicked him off stage and I figured out after I kicked him off that it was Justin Timberlake. And so I'm partially blind and I did not expect to see him at this thing. It's not like it was a music industry thing. And so I went and got him and brought him back on stage and he beatboxed and I tried to rap over it and stuff. And it ended up being on, TMZ and all kind of stuff like that. And so I didn't want to tell that story because I was like, I didn't want to capitalize on it. I didn't want to, I thought I was honored that he came to my show and he was like, man, I'm a fan. He told me that. He's like, I'm a fan. You're dope. I've been a fan of yours since, I can't remember if he said Shadows in the Sun or whatever, but he's like, I'm a for real fan. He's like, remember, I'm from, Tennessee. I think he's from Tennessee. And he's like, I'm a fan of yours. I'm like, dude, I'm a fan too. You know what I mean? This happened in like 2007, maybe. And yeah, I mean, he's had some weird public moments since then, but at that time it was still Cry Me a River and like all this super ill
Oh yeah.
music. And so yeah, I didn't want to capitalize. I didn't want to capitalize on it or anything like that. And then the KRS-One thing happened in like 2012 or 2013. It's been over 10 years since that happened. I just was in a mood writing songs one day. And there's actually, so Two Dudes is actually from a Richard Pryor sketch that me and Ant both really love, where he's talking
Love it.
about, yeah, there's like a guy trying to tell a joke and he can't tell jokes. He's like, it's two dudes, right? Two dudes. And so me and Ant always say that. And so, yeah, I was just in Minneapolis making music with Ant. Whenever I do funny songs, it's just because I'm trying to make Ant laugh. Like I'm just trying to make him happy. And so that's what that is. There's a song on there called Better But Us. Anytime there's a joke, it's always to try to make Ant laugh.
I love that. So let's talk the album. The album's out as of this dropping. It came out Friday the 14th. It's called Satisfied Soul. It came out on Mello Music Group. You, Ant, produced, and we've had the pleasure of listening to it for a couple of days now to get ready to talk to you. And it's awesome. Like it is 17 tracks. It is. You don't skip anything. You just put it on and let it finish. It's awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel great about it. I mean, it's, I knew that, like, always making music with Ant is really special, just mostly because of our friendship and our brotherhood. And this time was the easiest time that we ever had making music. It was definitely a lot of hard living and hard, like, life experiences that went into preparing for it. But by the time I went to Minneapolis, I moved away from Minneapolis and moved to Turkey, moved to Istanbul. I went back there just to sit with him. And once we started working, it just poured out. And for both of us, just every single song, it just felt like this shouldn't have been this easy. And I just kept saying to him, we're very good at this. And he was like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. You know what I mean? I'm like, we're very good at this. Song after song after song after song. There's 17 songs on there. We made 18. And the only reason we took one of them off is it just was too angry. You know what I mean? It's like the only angry song on the record. And it just felt like complaining. And I just was like, it doesn't match the vibe of the album. But like we made 18 amazing songs, no misses, nothing didn't work. It just, we've made a lot of great music together. And this is one of our favorites. It's right up there with everything else.
Does that ease just come from history, relationship, or is that ease just, you just captured a moment, or is it all the above?
Yeah, it's both.
It's both. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is like, we've just made so much music together. We've got a shared like language at this point. We've got a shorthand, but then so much of it was just the fact that we caught up with each other at the right time.
When you decided you were going to put another record out, was it always going to be you and Ant again? It's been a little while, right? It's been about 8 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, I made another album with a different producer named Unjust. I put one out last year. I basically back in 2020 decided that I wasn't going to do my business on Rhymesayers anymore. And that I was going to, me and BK1, my first partner, my first DJ, that we were going to basically start a company together. And so we did a couple of smaller releases together. And then I ended up making a full length album with a producer named Unjust. And we released that on our label just completely alone. And it just didn't, I feel like it didn't go right. Like, I feel like people didn't even know that we made it. It was, our first time trying to do it. So, but while we were doing that, I was also making the album with Ant. And so, yeah, I always know that I'm going to make my best music with him. It just, it takes me a while to get to a place where I feel like I'm ready to do that. Like, I never just make music with him just to make music. It's always, I've had a big change in my life and it's time to go to Ant to chronicle and document it.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if I heard it or read it, and it may have been a while ago, and you may feel differently now, but you said something to the effect of, that's kind of where home is. Like, that's what people know me for, is working with him. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the sound that people most associate, like the people who may have me in their top 10, those people, is probably because of the fact that the music I've made with Ant, Shadows on the Sun, Undisputed Truth, Us, All the Beating This Whole Life, like those are probably the things that they're talking about. there are other people that know me from my work with Jake One or Evidence or, somebody else. But when I go to a show, when I go to if you go to a Brother Ali show, these people are in this building mostly because of the music I made with Ant.
Yeah, like we said, that I think it was 2003 is when we got into you, and I saw you at the Rock the Bells New York show, 2007. That was the first time I saw you live, but I think that's where a lot of people kind of got in. But what was interesting is I was looking at on your socials, and you had just mentioned that songs like Drum were kind of like new classics, right? People were digging those, and you were just kind of observing that those hit. In the making of those, did you kind of see that coming? I'm always curious with artists where there's a clear banger, but did you know it in the moment?
I always have a sense for like what that particular audience will like. And I have an idea, but me and Ant culturally are not the same as the people, that audience. Like that, audience. Like I said, if you go to one of our shows, the reason that show is full is like a certain profile of person. And me and Ant, like we started in hip hop 10 years before that. You know what I mean? 10 years before those people got into it. And, we come just culturally from different. So we make a lot of music that we think those people are going to like, and we're wrong. Like they don't necessarily like it. But all of it, when, everything that we put on there, it's like, I think that the people will like this, So yeah, like Drum, like when he gave me that music, I was like, okay, I can make something soulful and energetic and uplifting, and that group of people will probably really reward us for it. So yeah, I do have a sense, of like there's a certain thing, and then only like that very specific vibe is something that only me and Ant can do. Like Slug gets those gospel beats from Ant sometimes. Like Get Fly is an example of that atmosphere. Get Fly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was the only beat that Slug ever got that I was like, that should have been mine. I want that.
Yeah. I
But
could hear you
like
on that one.
what he does is different than what I do. You know what I mean? So it's it's a great atmosphere song. But I just I know that like me and Ant with a gospel sample is going to be something that's nobody else does. Me and Ant with a blues sample, me and Ant with a reggae sample, like those things, it's always going to be something that's very uniquely ours, which is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Being able to have your own. I mean, we were talking last night and getting ready to talk to you that you're kind of 101 with that. Like the way that the vibe of the music, everything's kind of out there. You tell everybody up front what you are, and are you're a storyteller in rhyming, which I think we talked about that late 90s kind of flashy, look at all the stuff I have. That stuff doesn't hit as you get older, whereas what you're doing continues to hit and continues to make people think and continues to vibe with people as you age, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody. Somebody was visiting Istanbul who used to write for Double XL, and I had this kind of moment at Double XL in 2012, or no, 2017, when All the Beating This Whole Life came out. I went to New York on a press run, and I went to Double XL, and I was like, these guys never write about me. They're not going to care. I'm probably going to feel like a broke, out of the loop rapper. Like I wasn't excited. And there's a song that I wrote a verse in a song called Sensitive about this. And they were very excited. They treated me great, everybody. And then I met so many people there, and they all knew the music and everything. And I kind of went off on them in their office, and they were being really nice to me. But I was like, you guys do not talk about us like we're part of hip hop. But you clearly know. It would be one thing if you didn't know. But like, you don't treat me and Merce and Atmosphere and whoever, like Immortal Technique and like all of my friends, you treat us like we're not, you treat us like we don't exist. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, you just put out a list of the best storytellers in hip hop. And I should be on that list. I'm objectively one of the best storytellers in hip hop. And you know that. I didn't think you knew.
Right.
So it's like, I kind of wasn't that mad because I'm like, okay, they don't know. But I'm like, you guys are trembling while you're taking pictures with me on your phones. You know what I mean? You know. And so yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, I mean, I feel really good about what we've been able to do. And it's enough to me, and I'm just happy that somebody listens. I'm happy that we get to make a living doing this. I haven't worked for somebody else since I was 20, 22 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
So that exchange was a few years ago. Do you have any thoughts like that now? I mean, I think just based on listening to you talk and your albums, and even the name of the album, Satisfied Soul, it's like maybe I don't care about that anymore.
I mean, there are certain things that are objectively true. There are certain things that are objectively injustices, and they're wrong. You know what I mean? Whether it's like major political things or like it's wrong that me and my cohort, and I didn't really want to be in that cohort. It's not like I looked at this like group of artists and was like, that's where I want to be. I wanted to be in the OK Player cohort. I wanted to be with Common and Black Thought and Mos Def, and you know what I mean? Like where Little Brother ended up, that's where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, it didn't take very long. I would say by 2007 or so. So, starting out in 2000, by the time I hit like 2007 and my second album came out, I was very proud of the people that I was with. And I remain that way. But yeah, it's wrong that people treat us like we don't exist. It's wrong that when, these things are talked about, and it's because we're not cool, which is like, I understand why we're not cool. You know what I mean? And I'm not self-deprecating, and people be like, no, what do you mean? I'm saying compared to Yassine Bey, I'm not cool. He's one of my best friends. He's cool, I'm not. I've been in plenty of rooms where nobody knows who we are even. And he's got a magnetism where every actor, supermodel, religious leader, everybody wants to know, who is that man? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And with me, it's just like, if you get to know me, it's like, oh, he's one of my favorite people. It's not the same thing,
Yeah.
So I understand that. But anybody talking about this artistically and to just treat us like it never even happened, and then there's people that came along after us that benefited from what we did, and those people got acknowledged. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, if you never acknowledge me, or, so like they didn't acknowledge LP until he became cool. Like he did something with Run the Jewels that like that got acknowledged. But he's the same LP that he was in Company Flow, and when he produced Cannibal Ox, and when he's the same LP he's always been. And those people knew about his music back then. But then once you get to a certain level, now they finally acknowledge that you even exist. Whereas like people that learned from us that became famous, like they were able to benefit from what they saw us do. And that's always the way it works in a movement. It's like there's nothing wrong with it. But you see the way that Mac Miller got acknowledged, and Macklemore got acknowledged, and and other people got acknowledged later that very clearly took a lot of inspiration from us, and even would tell us that. So yeah, so that is an injustice that we have never been even part of the conversation. I'm not saying give me a Grammy. I'm just saying if you're talking about the best political songs, it's like, yeah, Kendrick Lamar, We Gonna Be All Right should be up there. It's true. But so should Uncle Sam, goddamn.
Mm-hmm.
And so should about 4 records from Immortal Technique. And so should Makeshift Patriot by Sage Francis. And so should, and it's not that people don't know about this music. Like, people that know music know our music too, but they just don't even consider it. And that's wrong. However, in my personal life, day to day, in my skin, the album is called Satisfied Soul. In my personal life, on a day to day basis, I'm extremely grateful and extremely happy and extremely fulfilled. And I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
So yeah, you can be both, right? You can want to bring attention to an injustice, this injustice, or any other injustice, but also be happy in your day-to-day life. That's a good way to think too, because it keeps us from being satiated, I guess. Like, you're not just going to sit around and be, all right, well, I don't have the energy for that. Well, no, you can also have energy for that and still be happy in your everyday life.
Yeah, and it's a deeply like spiritual concept within Islam. that, you know, the mystical side of Islam, the spiritual side of Islam, which they call Sufism, holds that in the development of a human soul, the lowest level of development, the most childish version of ourselves, is that we're the demanding soul. So our inner self just demands whatever it wants and expects, like we feel entitled to whatever we want. So that's like, you know, Donald Trump saying you just grab them by the whatever, the private parts. You know what I mean? It's like if I want something, I demand it. And it doesn't matter if it hurts me or anyone else. And then the next phase, the kind of in between phase, which is where most of us are at that are actually conscious and like working on ourselves, is that we take ourselves to account and we examine ourselves and we have self-awareness and knowledge of self, that like not everything I want is good. And I need to become wise, you know, and learn to become disciplined. I need to discipline my desires. I need to discipline my ego, you know, to become wise. But then the final stage is to be satisfied and satisfying. So we're satisfied with whatever the creator does, and we hope to be satisfying, you know, to have a relationship with the divine that's like everything, including my pain and my tests, are all tailor-made for me. They're all gifts, including my fight, you know. So it doesn't mean that we don't fight, but it's like I'm happy to fight on the battlefield that was made for me, and I know that I'm supposed to be here. You know, everything that missed me was not for me. I don't know who I would be. I don't know if I would like the person I am if I had the things that I thought I wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I could listen to you talk all day. There's a
He's got a podcast.
Well, I do. I listened to when you had Ann on a couple months back, but yeah, there's a thoughtfulness and in a wisdom that I don't often pause and think about. But coming from you, it kind of makes me kind of think about everything. But I did want to talk about a track that, again, if you're listening to this, the album's out, go listen to it. It's the last track on the album, and we have a term on this podcast, Ali. When a track hits, it's called last track magic, and you have it with "Sing Myself Whole." Got a little background on the beat of that with Ant. Was there pressure? And a little context here, in case you don't know, Ant had that beat for like a decade, right? And wanted the right place for it. Was there pressure for you to come in and be like, "Hey, I gotta bring it on this"?
Yeah. So we tell the story on my podcast, and he had that music for a long time. And I told him, like, man, this album is about this like healing journey for me and things. And I feel like I need something, you know, we always do these kind of like tear jerkers, emotional songs. And pretty much everything that we've done, they usually are the last song or second to last song. And I was like, man, we need that. And he was like, okay, I have a piece of music, but I'm telling you, this is so important to me that it's not automatically yours. Like, I would rather have this never come out than have it not be perfect. So you can try it, but I'm reserving the right to take it back. And I don't care how I'm just telling you, it's not you. It's like my relationship with what this music means to me and the moment that he made it in. So he gave it to me, and then he went out of town to go play a show. And I was in Minneapolis by myself, and I had like 2 days or something. And so, yeah, I decided I was going to sing. And I can't really sing, but I was like, I made a song about the fact that music has been there for me over and over and over again. And it's been the way that I've just healed from everything bad that's ever happened. Like, you make music about something and it's the most healing thing ever. And in a lot of ways, he feels that way as well. And that's what he was telling me when he said, this piece of music was when, you know, he had his first daughter, and when he got sober, and when he, you know, got married, and like my whole life changed. And this piece of music means all of that to me. So I'm like, okay. But then also I'm talking about our relationship, because when I'm saying like music was there for me, it's like really that music I'm talking about, I can only do with him. Right. So yep. It's about music, but it's also about our bond through music.
Yeah, it's a great track, and it's a great way to wrap up the record, and it fits right where it is. And if you haven't listened to it, pause the rest of this convo and go listen to it right now, because you won't be disappointed. So, tour. You just finished one. You got one coming up here in early April for about a month with DJ Abilities, hitting all over again. I think you're in our neck of the woods a couple times in Burlington, Vermont, and then in Boston too. Pretty excited to get back out there again, play some of these songs for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love touring. I really do. I love being with the listeners. I love performing. I love the camaraderie of like working on something with somebody and traveling with people and stuff. And I've never toured with DJ Abilities before. But I mean, for people that were around, so his group was Idea and Abilities. And I mean, they're just virtuosos, and they were really very young virtuosos. And they were known because of the fact that they both were like champions in the field of like battle. So like early MC battles where people were rhyming off the top of their head over a beat. Idea won every battle. He won everything. And he won it as like a scrawny, white, nerdy, skateboard looking kid in the most like traditional hip hop situations. He won one on HBO called the Blaze Battle, but he won every battle that there was. No one could handle him. And he was like 19 at that time or 18 or something. And DJ Abilities was his partner as a DJ, and he won all the DJ battles. And the two of them were just like these fearless, cocky, you know, Idea looked like a skater. Abilities looks like a surfer. Like he looks like Keanu Reeves or something. He's like beautiful and buff and like, you know what I mean? It's just like, what the hell is going on? But they're both like white extremely white culturally. But they're just amazing at what they did. But then the music that they made was really artsy. Like almost that people were mad. Like, where's all this battle energy that we see you in these battles? And we want to hear you ripping the mic. And it's like jazz and super artistic and stuff. And they just started to find their voice, and then Idea died. And so Abilities, has kind of been carrying that torch. And, so us touring together, I'm really excited about it. And I've never had like a straight up just turntablist, like a technician on the turntables, who he's also a producer. So I'm really excited for what that's going to look like. We haven't started building the set yet, but I'm just like, man, this could be deadly. It could be really crazy.
I was fortunate enough to catch Idea and Slug do that on stage probably 22 or 3 years ago in Boston. And you're right, he was phenomenal. They were phenomenal. So that'll be cool, man. I'm excited to maybe we'll get down to the Boston date. I think you're at the Sonia. Does that sound right in Boston?
Sounds right. I used to always play the Middle East, and I don't know if Middle East is still a thing. I know it closed for a little bit, but man, we had epic nights in the Middle East.
Yeah,
because you had the upstairs and downstairs. I think. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's as a venue, it's going away. I think in the next year or so. I think there were plans to kind of move on from it, but cool venue.
Yeah, I think they're phasing it out. Yeah, I remember hearing something about that, but yeah, man, that was and then and then I've played a number of places in Boston. There's a place called Paradise.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
That we played a few times. That's a really historic place too. That was the first place that Louis C.K. opened for Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then there's the House of Blues that's right across the street from Fenway Park. I played there with Atmosphere a few times. Man, one night I was playing there in 2016, and there was like an Instagram model, like with the, she had the surgeries and everything, and she had been DMing me, and I was like, who is this like Instagram model in my DMs? I was like, this isn't cool. You know what I mean? I was just responding. My responses were like, oh, thanks so much. You know what I mean?
Trying to keeping it succinct. Yeah.
It's like, let me just be a husband right now. Thanks so much. I appreciate you supporting the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she's like sending me pictures of like just straight body parts. I'm like, this is. So she comes to the show, and we saw her outside. She was waiting outside while we were like loading in. She was there hours before the show, and. Of course, the other guys in the crew are just like, yo, what's up with this? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't know what this is. And then when I was on stage, she made it rain on me like a stripper. Like she threw a big thing of ones at me.
Wow.
And she threw a bunch of money on stage on me, but like not at me, but like she made it rain on me like a stripper. And I didn't know what to do.
Was that a first? Was that a first for you?
First time having somebody make it rain on me. But I'm like, man, this is clearly what her fans do for her. So I'm like, and then so I collected the money, or somebody collected the money after the show, after I got done performing. I was opening for Atmosphere. And then our tour manager came and I was like, hey, does she want that money back or something? It just, I don't know what's the etiquette of getting it rained on. You know what I mean? And then, but yeah, they said she went next door and got in a fist fight with somebody and got arrested.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Jesus.
So I kept the money.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really give it to her at that point. Probably not enough to bail
Yeah, it
her
was
out either.
$60 or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just 61. You know what I mean? It
Wow.
looked like a music video.
I mean, that's wild. Yeah, cool. Let's get you out of here on this last one. What keeps you coming back 25 years, 30 years in, making this? I feel like you answered it throughout the conversation, but is there one thing or a couple things that keep you coming back doing this?
I mean, more than anything, it's a lot of things. It is my calling. It's very clear that, I've known that I was this since I was a little kid. It's the thing that I've been blessed to do as good as anyone, as good as anybody that's ever, and so there's that. I believe that this is what the creator gave me to be able, but more than that even is just the connection, the connection with my friends that I make the music with. The friendship with Ant is it's probably the most important friendship in my life. BK1 is those two guys are the people I've been closest with the longest. BK was my DJ and he's my partner now in our company. Those two people is what I have with them, I could never have with anybody else. That's just what it is. So that's a huge part of it. But then also the fact that I make music about the things that are big in my heart and in my life. And there's strangers that listen to it and they cry to it and they listen to it when they have a baby or they graduate or they get married or when someone dies or I'm part of music and I get to be part of people's lives. And so, it's really that. I recently got offered a really prominent, I also teach Islam, and I got offered a 6-figure salary to go live in a city that I love and be the executive director of an Islamic organization. And I was like, man, I would have benefits and I'd have an actual paycheck for the first time in my life and all this stuff. And I'm just like, nah.
Wow.
If the listeners are still going to let me make music and they're still going to listen to it, buy it, show up and watch me perform, I'm not doing anything else until they decide I can't anymore.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, the record's out right now as of this dropping, and go check Satisfied Soul. Go see Brother Ali on tour with DJ Abilities. Go check out the Travelers podcast, which you put out about weekly, roughly weekly.
Yeah, weekly. There's times if I get on tour or something like that, we might miss a few weeks, but yeah, we do it every week.
Yeah. So that's out there too, and that's fun to listen to. I've dabbled in and out with guests and such like that too, just like people do with podcasts nowadays, right? And everybody's just picking what they want. But hopefully, you guys checked out the record, and we're excited for what you got coming this year, man.
Tony, Anthony, Antoine, Antonio.
Love it, baby.
Yeah. The whole crew, all the Anthonys. I appreciate you guys, man. Thanks for talking to me.
This was great. Genuinely appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good one, fellas. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.